Hello, my name is Brian Kajiyama. I am a graduate student at the University of Hawaii where I am pursuing a master's in education from the counseling department. Today I'd like to share with you two stories from my teenage years. These stories will demonstrate that students might have different reactions to their peers with disabilities as well as distinctly different ways of coping with peers with disabilities. One day while I was at Kailua Intermediate, I was out roaming the school grounds doing physical therapy. I used to walk around the campus with my physical therapist, and one day we were doing our usual routine. I made my way up the stairs of a building. I think it might have been Building C. I slowly made my way up the stairwell, step by step. As I approached the top, I looked to my right and I noticed graffiti on the wall. I wasn't fazed by the graffiti because I've seen graffiti at school many a times. However, upon closer inspection, I noticed that my name that belongs to me, Brian Kajiyama, was sprayed on the wall. Safe to say that caught my attention immediately. I read the graffiti closer, as I now had a vested interest in what it said, and after my name were the words, "is a Crip." So in full, someone had defaced school property with paint, spraying, "Brian Kajiyama is a Crip." I know that Crip was one faction of a gang, like the Bloods and Crips, but Crip could have also been short for crippled, a term that I find derogatory. My physical therapist realized what the situation was and immediately suggested we head back to the classroom. Upon returning to the classroom, my counselor was notified and she did an awesome job in rectifying the situation immediately by having the custodians paint the graffiti over. The perpetrators of this criminal property damage were never caught, but my friends and I had a great suspicion as to who they were prior to this incident. I was ignorant to the fact that I would have people who would not like me. I was not aware that I would have enemies. I treated everyone I knew at the highest level of respect and expected that they would treat me the same. However, this was not the case and I was educated in a rather harsh way that people with disabilities can and will be treated in ways that are plain mean and degrading. I would gain strength to cope with this negative experience by turning to my friends. I did not tell my parents about this until much later in my life. In fact, my parents found out only a few years ago as I spoke about it at my graduation party, explaining that this was a moment that helped me to become the person I am today, as it forced me to grow up quicker and to become thick-skinned. Gaining strength from friends leads me into my next story. On the first day of intermediate school, I was new to this area of town as I had always attended school in Honolulu. I was now back in Kailua, back home attending school where I belonged. On the first day I was like a fish out of water, trying to make sense out of everything. I can vividly recall going into my Hawaiian studies class and I saw this boy with red hair smiling and looking very happy. He immediately came over and sat by me. "Hi, my name is Dan. What is your name?" he asked. "I'm Brian," I replied. That would be the start of a beautiful friendship. Dan and I would become best friends. He accepted me for who I was, beyond being this kid in a wheelchair who used a letterboard to communicate. He saw me as his friend. There is no better feeling than to know that you have a friend. especially when you're in a new environment trying to make sense of it all. Dan and I would eat lunch in the cafeteria together. He would eagerly help me retrieve my lunch from the serving area and we would eat together. He would patiently listen to what I had to say by watching me spell out words, letter by letter, on my letterboard. Eventually, we would become to know each other so well that I could increase the rate that I spelled my words, and he would often know what I was going to say, so he would say the words so I wouldn't need to finish spelling the whole thing. Dan would introduce me to his friends and we became a nice tight-knit group of boys who hung out during recess. We would always hang out at the basketball courts and play stickball. It was neat because Dan felt the need to include me in all of his activities. I always wanted to play sports and be on a team. Well, Dan played Little League Baseball and he would ask me to tag along to his practices and I would eventually know the coaches and other teammates. It was as if I was on the team. I would attend every game that they played, cheering them on as best I could. One afternoon, they had an awards ceremony after the season had ended and they invited me. I thought I would attend just to support my friends, but to my surprise I was presented with an award. It was an award to acknowledge the best fan and supporter that the team had. This meant a lot to me as I felt I was truly part of this team. Dan and I would hang out at his place often and he had a swimming pool. He took it upon himself to make sure I would be able to enjoy this part of life. I thought it was very cool and I did enjoy frolicking in the pool. At high school, Dan and I had this amazing relationship where if anyone teased me or did anything to disrespect me, he had his friends, who were large and bigger kids, to talk to the students who might be teasing me and ask them to stop and explain that I was smarter than they were so they should stop treating me as if I was stupid. So my friendship with Dan illustrates how someone can take on the perspective of, I'm going to be this kid's friend even if he might use a wheelchair or take longer to communicate than others. So what? To this day, Dan and I maintain a great relationship despite his living in New York. We communicate regularly over instant messaging and I get to see him on an annual basis as he flies home for business in the month of February. So I guess I would ask those of you who are watching this video to ask yourself which person you are. Are you the person who would maintain a negative perspective of a peer who might have a disability, or would you be more like my friend Dan, who maintains a positive regard for people regardless of whether they might have a disability or not? Lastly, if you are a student who might have a disability, I would encourage you to surround yourself with people who accept you for who you are. Don't fall into the trap of trying to be someone you are not. You are you, and that is the most important person you can be. Thanks for listening and have a great day. If you would like me to visit your school, I would be more than happy to do so. Just contact the producer of this video and we'll make it happen.